I know your stance on this upcoming football season, but do those in favor of playing this fall have a point?
They have a great point, and I get where they're coming from in terms of what they want and why they want it. You know, I'm one of those people who believes that if you know what, the student athlete needs to be preoccupied. If they're not playing their sports, what are they doing? Chances are they're going to be someplace else exposing themselves potentially to the coronavirus. So we understand all of that. I get exactly where they're coming from. I get where they're coming from when they're talking about, listen, don't cancel anything, postpone it. Let's figure out a way. I totally understand that sentiment because we all want college football. I don't blame them for wanting it as well. I get it, but here's the big problem. Think about what Coach Ryan Day said. Let's step back. Let's take a deep breath. I don't know anybody's capable of taking a deep breath for 5 months because that's how long it's been. NBA season was canceled March 11th. Thereafter, March Madness and practically everything else ultimately was closed down within the week. It's been 5 months. What the hell has college football been doing? You had ample opportunity to act on this. Listen, I gave a speech to the football team at Alabama. Like I said, Paul knows this. Max, I mentioned this to you months ago. Nick Saban had me speak to the football team again, of course. Last season, I spoke to Dabo Sweeney and Clemson. I love college football. I love what these guys represent. I want to see my college football on Saturday afternoon. And my mentality was, go ahead, find a way, put in the safety protocols necessary, exhaust every means and option, do whatever the hell you got to do, and then get these games on a roll. But that was with the assumption that somehow, some way, there would be leadership, folks would collaborate with one another, come up with a definitive conclusion, and move forward. That's not the case. Even with the Big Five, who's separate and apart from everybody else in college football because of the revenue that they generate, you got the Pac-12 operating differently than the Big Ten, the Big Ten operating differently than the ACC or the SEC. With the Pac-12, you got presidents and chancellors from every university. With the, I guess it's the Big Ten or somebody else. I forgot which conference it was when they were talking about where the athletic directors are going to meet and then the board of directors is going to meet. Excuse me, why aren't you not meeting together? Everybody's fragmented. There's a bunch of little dots and little pieces all over the place, and it's impossible to come with a definitive conclusion. And if the concern were the kids, if the concern were the students, all right, you've had all of these months to make a decision, and we're talking about how, they're going to meet today. How the hell you didn't meet last month or the month before that or the month before that? I'm talking about plotting and planning. Worst case scenario, this is what we have to embrace. Be ready to go. Nobody has pulled that off with college football. So how can you be trusted to do anything that's beneficial to the student athlete? I don't see how you can pull that off. And without being able to pull that off, I don't see the argument here in favor of going ahead with the games.
I think first of all, I do think that those coaches have a point. And especially when you hear about, like, where do some of these kids go? Where am I sending them? Let alone them pursuing their dreams and the opportunities. And I don't take that lightly and say, to hell with that. Of course they have a point. These decisions aren't easy. Even if they're obvious what should be done, they're still not easy. There's a price to be paid. There's a toll taken. I get it, so they do have a point. And as Paul has told us, and I'm sure can tell us again, there's a decentralized authority in college football. So, Stephen A., when you say, what have they been doing in college football? It's kind of like boxing, which I know all about. There's no they there. There's not, at least not one they there, right? There's lots of theys. And so sometimes it's hard to get everyone on the same page. But I think really, even if you wanted to take it to extreme measures, say we're going to create bubbles in college football, you would have to acknowledge, as has been written about in various places over the last several days, that these student athletes are actually workers. And then they'd be entitled to the rights of workers. There are all these rules in college, at the college level, about how student athletes can be treated versus the way the rest of campus can be treated. They can't be treated that much differently. Once they have certain things that are different from them, then a certain percentage of the student body needs it available to them too, or else you're separating out college athletes. Now, look, college athletes, especially if they're actually student athletes and not just nominally student athletes, but they're actually serious about pursuing their academic careers too, work harder than everybody else. Like, you know, and so they are different and all that. Nevertheless, the rules are the rules. And in order for college football to proceed safely with bubbles and stuff like that, suddenly they'd be empowering the student athletes as an actual labor force, which they clearly are. Like, one of the issues right now, and the reason they wouldn't do that is because it would have all kinds of financial ramifications going forward, and even maybe there's the fear that you lose that veneer of amateurism, which is one of the appeals of college football. And so I think one of the issues we're dealing with is a lot of these same coaches, when asked under normal circumstances talk about student athletes and how much they value the student athlete and they emphasize the student, when in fact what's happening here, the real pressure being brought to bear is the financial possibilities of ruin for a lot of these places, or of real hardship if they don't play. But you can't really talk about that, because then you're acknowledging that these student athletes are much more professionals than you've given them credit for.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.